Hello, everybody, and welcome to another session of Change Leadership Conversations. Excited to have you all join us today. Excited to have the speakers join us today. So, today is going to be a session of which we call Fast Five. So, what was interesting about the Fast Five was way before the pandemic, way before technology and LinkedIn Live and all of this, when we would actually do a five fast questions for all of our speakers and would print it in the brochure. But now we
That
get
change.
oh, killing all the trees, so but now we get to do a lot of things more digital and do it live and having this fast five session, which would love to ask our speakers five fast questions and really get behind the curtains and learn more about them. And so we welcome your questions, we welcome your comments. Put comments in there. I already see a comment from Tanya. Super excited for the session. Looking forward to hearing from our 2024 Change Leadership Experience speakers. Thank you, Tanya. I'm excited to hear from them. So a little bit about me. I'm Yvonne Aquavetter. I am the founder of the Change Leadership. I enjoy having this type of change leadership conversations. We have community, we have courses, we have our conference, which is one of the biggest things we have, and we've been doing that for about 8 years. And every year I'm like, okay, we're doing this again. And we are really doing this again. So thank you all to the speakers we have here. So I'm going to start off, with somewhat of an introduction. Let's do a quick introduction. So going around the table, starting off with you, Rihanna, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hey, everybody in the audience. Nice to meet you. I'm Rihanna Rajwani. I work at Bank of Montreal, and I basically lead the learning and development for the Agile Center of Excellence.
Awesome. Great to have you here. And Cher.
Hey everyone, I'm Cher Jones, and I am a corporate trainer and keynote speaker, and I specialize in helping leaders and their teams build their personal brands at work for work. So their brand supports them in their role right now, helps them build their career, and also helps them show up as incredible employee advocates.
And thank you, Amanda.
Hello, I'm losing my voice, but I am okay. This is what happens when you talk for a living. I work at Lead Podcasting. I am the CEO and founder. And so this is a podcast production company that creates podcasts for business leaders and organizations that are looking through the noise.
Amanda, thank you that you could still join us, even though we're losing you, your voice, but still great to have you join us. And Tim.
Tim May. I'm the creative director of Explain, which is a tier 1 consulting studio. I have been helping teams and organizations visualize and enact change for about 16 years. And I, as a creative director, I facilitate and help teams and particularly leaders visualize the change they're trying to make happen. And then, like we say, if you can say it, like a picture is 1,000 words, I draw the damn picture so that they can actually see where they're trying to go. So I help, serve as the hands of the team as we co-create really cool visual tools to help accelerate change and make it have a lasting impact.
Thank you. Welcome to our speakers for the Fast Five session, and welcome to our speakers who are going to be at the conference, and welcome to anybody who is listening. So if you're listening live or if you're watching the replay, I always say this: drop an emoji, drop a word, drop an emoji. We want to hear from you. Tell us where you're joining us from. Usually we have Toronto, but we even have Tim. Tim isn't based in the Toronto. Tim, tell us, where are you based?
I am in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, so do we have any other Portland, Oregon person in the house? Just simply drop a comment and let us know where you're joining us from. So thank you to all of the speakers. And in the spirit of you telling us where you are now and what you do, I want to take us on a journey. You didn't just get to being director, Agile center of practice, or, corporate speaker and trainer, or, creative director, even you, Amanda, in terms of what you do now around, disrupting how we communicate in organizations internally. Let's start with my first question for the four of you, starting with you, Rihanna. What was your first job ever?
When I was thinking about this question, I realized we have to look at our life as the full life, right? And so my first job ever was actually as a math and English tutor to a fifth grader. And I earned about 1,000 rupees a month, which translates to roughly about $5 a month. And that's what I did. I enjoyed just teaching people and sharing my learning and really learning back in return too, because you often, learn something and you're like, didn't get that homework question right. Okay, here's something I've learned.
Oh
so
my
that
God.
was my first job, a long time ago.
Teaching math. Oh my gosh. I have to say my least favorite subject till today. So I have to come to you for those accounting lessons.
Anytime.
What about you, Cher? What was your first ever job?
Okay, so I'm going to go into the Jamaican stereotype, but I didn't have just one job. So my parents are entrepreneurs, they're hairdressers, and they had several salons in Toronto. So I begged my parents, I wanted to work for them. I also had a babysitting business, and my first job in that same circle, in the same time, I worked for a day camp, and I got paid $400 for the entire summer, blood, sweat, and tears. It was Green Acres Day Camp. I will never forget it. And those were at the same time, I had all those jobs.
OMG. Doing all of that. And you know what? I mean, as we go through the first jobs, it's interesting, to see where we are now and where we're coming from, because it's often about the past, the present, and the future. Everything, to create the future, it's a merging of the past and the present, to take us to the next level. So everything is just as important. Amanda, what about you? What was that first ever job?
So my first ever job was working as a swimming instructor, and I was trying to become a lifeguard, but fun fact, you can become a swimming instructor at a younger age than you can a lifeguard. So I fast-tracked my swimming lessons. I wasn't old enough to be a lifeguard, but I was 15 and I was old enough to be a swimming instructor. And so that was my gig. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So we have a swimmer in the house. And what about you, Tim? You're mute.
Yeah, I was just trying to not make a lot of background noise. As an art student, I worked at a bike shop and I loved bicycles. I was terrible so I tried to make every bike. I was the builder. I would build the bikes as they came out of the boxes and get them ready for people to ride. I tried to make each one of them a work of art, right? That I realized that it was a great learning in process and understanding that you actually do need to optimize some things. So that might have been my first favorite job. Maybe the second favorite job is I do a lot of work with Red Bull, and we at times get to meet with Red Bull sponsored athletes and break dancers and high divers and these other people. And they're trying to come up with dream projects they might be able to do to accelerate the brand. And being able to draw people's dreams is just a wonderful thing to do, to kind of give wings to their ideas.
Wow. I'm thinking we have such a vast and varied background here. Thank you all for introducing yourselves in terms of your first job. And how I mentioned that you look at your first job to where you are now, and for some people it's changed drastically. Amanda, hey, swimming instructor to lead podcasting. So all of that really changes. So my second, question for you is, what was that single most profound turning point in your career trajectory to bring you to where you are now? One of the things that, people talk about is find your passion, find that thing you love. I sometimes say, find that thing you love that pays for the lifestyle you love. So sometimes just doing what can pay for the lifestyle you love can be, your best job. So when you think about your career trajectory, what was that single profound moment? I'm going to go the other way around. Tim, what was it for you?
So coming out of college, I realized that this was a time that the world was changing, and maybe I didn't want to be a fine artist struggling to just paint in a studio. Mm-hmm. And so I worked for about 2 weeks straight, as many hours as I could stay awake every day, to build a website to promote myself. And this was back when I was coding it by hand and getting all the images right and laying them out. This was a while ago. But starting there gave me a leg up in becoming a commercial artist and eventually becoming sort of a design leader facilitator. But the place that I started really changed my trajectory when I did that.
Okay, that's interesting. And even as we listen to our speakers tell us about that single most profound moment that brought them to where they are today, would also love to hear from anybody listening or watching the replay. Tell us what's been that single profound moment? What was that aha moment that you had that you said, "This is what I need to be doing, and this is what has brought me to where it is that I am now." And Amanda, what was that for you? That aha moment that switched everything for you?
This question's tough because I feel like there was many, but I've had a non-linear career. So, but if I had to really pick one, I would pick working on a cruise ship for 7 months, which I did right before I graduated journalism school, my undergrad. In between my 3rd and 4th year, I took a semester off and I worked as a MC, like a social host. So I was running the conga lines. I was running the trivia. I was doing splash contests. I was doing bingo, all these fun things from the stage, which at the time, my parents and other people around me definitely thought I was goofing off and thought this was like, you just want to go on vacation. I worked so hard. I worked every single day. I have an incredible work ethic because of that standard it set for me early. I got to travel and see the world. I got a global mindset at an impressionable age, made me fall in love with travel. And it led to my first full-time job in radio, which I was out in the Bahamas and I met a comedian on the ship who had a best friend who worked at a talk radio station in Toronto. And that comedian I was introducing up onto the stage, befriended. And he's like, "Well, do you want to be on the radio? Like, do you like this broadcasting?" And I was like, "Yes, that's what I'm studying." And he's like, "Oh, I'll connect you." And that's how I shadowed at that radio station. That's where I got my first full-time job producing. And I've had such a long career now in radio, podcasting, broadcasting. And I do think that cruise ship gig, even though it felt like a sidestep, it really did help me with the career that I wanted.
I love that because I love this comment that we see here, which is coming from LinkedIn, and they took the words right out of my mouth. They say, "I love non-linear, non-silo career." Because that is so true. When you open up your mind to opportunities, you just never know what's going to come out of that. So I love non-linear things. It just gives you more opportunities. So thank you for sharing that. And audience agrees with that as well. What about you, Cher? What was that single aha profound moment?
It's interesting because they all came at once. When I was working with the city of Toronto, my background is in journalism as well as PR and communications. So I was responsible for a division's entire communication strategy, which there were 11 or 12 different business units within there, and they each had their own. They each had their own communications plan. They each had their own strategy for what they're trying to accomplish. And one of the things that I was doing while I was working at the city, and this is at the time when social media was just becoming a thing. So it was back in 2009 to 2013 was my time there. And we had a mayor who was prolific on Twitter, and Obama had just won the election. So this was a big deal. And my reputation for understanding social media and applying it to traditional communications became well known within an organization of over 37,000 people. And so if you said social media, you said Cher Jones in the same sentence, and I was able to find my way into opportunities where I was working with a team to develop policies. And also my internal clients were starting to recommend me to external agencies. And at the same time, I was given an opportunity to speak to youth and to speak to highly skilled professional newcomers and about how to leverage social media. At that time, I wasn't thinking brand building because it wasn't that a big of a term back then. It was more reputation. But to the youth, it was youth who are going straight from high school into the work world. So basically they wanted me to give them the message that if you post all those drunk pictures, you'll never get a job. So do this. And then to the newcomer skilled professionals, it was just, it was really about basics on LinkedIn. And at that point I was like, But what if they actually used the technology and they used what was available at the time to showcase why they're awesome? And that the whole concept of you can't ignore awesome was something that came to me at that point. It's impossible to ignore awesome. So for these young people at the time where, the dream of being a YouTuber was not there yet, it was just, they have all of these opportunities to showcase their skills and their expertise. And it was a shift in thinking. And then that became something that I recognized that I was already leveraging to opportunities and positions. And that was just when I was able to give words to it, when I was able to see strategy in it, that is when I was like, oh my gosh, this is bigger than we think. And so
that's what I love about your story you just shared is that sometimes you just have to dip your toes in the water. You just have to put your foot in because you don't have that strategy right there in front of you. You don't have the big picture, but you have you had a love for something, you saw an opportunity somewhere and you just started. And through that process, it came together because oftentimes we're waiting to see that big picture and put everything together. I mean, I was reading somewhere where they say sometimes these days it's not about a business plan because by the time you finish writing the business plan, everything is changed.
Especially now.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting because even my first talk on personal branding was back in 2013. So I'm literally a pioneer in this game. And
exactly.
It was called My Brand Ain't One. And I used Jay-Z lyrics to talk about personal branding and in a professional way. So yeah, that would be my most profound shift.
Thank you for sharing. Rihanna, what about you? What was that aha moment? What was that profound moment that changed your career trajectory?
So, I went to Waterloo to study engineering. And so moving to Canada would definitely count as one of them. But I think what really, really changed the way that I thought about work was I was studying engineering. It was a combination of software and industrial engineering. So management engineering was the degree term. And in the summer of 2012, I got a co-op in New York City working for what's now called Amplify, used to be called Wireless Generation, as a Scrum Master. Now, Scrum Master was a term that was not very well known at the time. Agile, I think, is still new for some people, but I know it's been around for decades now. And it was my first introduction to really working differently, to using tools like Rally and Jira and, trying to understand project management in a very different way, trying to understand software development in a very different way. And I think that just clicked with me, the human element to it. When I was 10, I read Blink by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah, that's a good book. Anybody who's read Blink, just drop an emoji there. That is a great book. Who's read Blink? Let's know.
Oh my gosh. I read all of Malcolm's books, but that one just stuck with me, right? Like the fact that things are in the unconscious mind, right? In the blink of an eye, the decisions you make and the idea of moving fast. And as a leader, how do you learn things? And it just kind of blended with, Agile and how it was working. And so it clicked, it just clicked. And then from there, I've always been into how do I use what I've learned in engineering to improve the human element of the workspace. And so I can explain to my dad all I want. He won't understand why I graduated with an engineering degree and what I'm doing now. But I just love it, right? Like the combination of the two of looking at things from an engineering lens, but bringing the human element to it.
Yeah, so we're going to be coming to even what your topic is going to be like at the conference, which is really interesting. So still in the spirit of our Fast Five, I want to move to the next question. And let's make this one, really fast because I'm sure we could go on with this one because this is very interesting. Which single area in the workplace do you think will be most disrupted by 2025, which is not far, which is next year? So this was the same question we asked our speakers last year, and we had all kinds of answers. But just 1 year from now, come end of 2025, because things happen very quickly, what's the single area that you think will be most disrupted? Fast five. So this is your fast third. Rihanna, starting with you.
Sure. I think it's going to be about how employees and employers interact. That relationship, I think, is just changing so fast. I know we've got speakers from the Knowledge Society, right, at the conference. Young people, how they're thinking about, society and the change and the impact they can bring. Employers may be looking at, age demographics very differently, like 10 years ago than they do now. And so I think that area is just being disrupted right now. And by 2025, a year, who knows what that might look like?
Okay, how they interact. As in, is it when you say how they interact, do you say like a level playing field?
I think we're already almost there, I would
Mhm.
say. I think there's more disruption happening there, but even the way that not just the level playing field, but even after the play has started, how does that relationship look? Even between
Okay.
the manager and the employee, right? Is
It-
that even a title anymore? Is
yeah,
the manager
exactly. I hear
anymore?
that
You
the
know?
titles are changing, you know.
Yeah.
Sure. What about you? What do you think is going to be that single most disruptive that's going to disrupt the workplace by end of next year?
Okay, definitely it tags on to what you guys were talking about. I think right now, as most organizations are becoming much more agile and flatter, what we're seeing now is that anybody can contribute regardless. So where the big shift, I think, for me is that middle manager, and they're going to move from that command and control typical position to
Mhm.
one where they are coaching, facilitating, and coordinating
Mm,
responsibilities. It's and building more trust, and that's where I see that difference maker is
mhm.
the less of do this, do this, do that, and more of facilitating growth and ideas and conversation and group.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And that just speaks into the ethos of why we do the change leadership is that everybody is a change leader, regardless of your role or title. So no longer are you waiting for your middle manager or your senior manager to do. Those titles are going, those roles are going. We're all now going to be responsible for being able to lead and respond to change better and faster. And that's the foundation of why we do what it is that we do. We got somebody in the comments that just said they just ordered the book Blink. you know so Amanda, coming to you, and also too, we want to hear from the audience. What do you think is going to be that single most disruptive thing in the workplace by that would have disrupted the workplace by 2025? Amanda, what is it for you?
There's been so many great answers, so I'll pick something a little more granular that I do think will be very disrupted, which is accessibility. So I think with the progressing AI technology and generative AI, a lot of people want things to be accessible, but have had it either being very cost prohibitive or very complicated from a tech perspective. And I think we're seeing a whole new world with transcription and things being made so that people with color sensitivity can be more welcoming, and like sound and speech to text, text to speech, all of these things are just supercharged in how they're getting so good. And we're going to be able to incorporate it and have an entire website read to someone who's got visual disabilities and visibility issues. And so I'm just really excited about this. And then with podcasting too, Apple just released automatic transcription for podcasts. And so that's a move that, I've been really championing, wanting to have transcriptions available. And now the tech is making it so much easier. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see how it continues to progress and how we'll be able to have a more inclusive digital space, and also like meeting and virtual meeting spaces.
I like that because a lot of times when we think about DEI, it's easy, not that we never, it's easy to forget the accessibility, and that creating more accessibility and opportunities and inclusion is very key. And, even taking that back to the Change Leadership Conference, it really wasn't an option for us to say, okay, we're going back in person and we're leaving the virtual piece out, because to us, the virtual piece was more about creating accessibility for people who couldn't be there in person. So that inclusive, approach to how we do work is becoming more key. So thank you for sharing that. So team, over to you quickly. What's that one single thing? How will the workplace be disrupted in 2025?
Well, I think a lot of us who work with change leaders, we've been hearing, through the late teens, AI is coming, AI is coming. Okay, AI is here. And I feel like by 2025, my hope and expectation is it will have stabilized somewhat. And so instead of being scary, we will have learned to dance with the robots a little bit better. And that we will have a clearer understanding of how we can get more done and how we can be more effective, and some of the things that I think are that right now we see upheaval, right? I think there's just a lot of like, where is the economy going to land? What's going to be the result of all this? Whereas I feel like in 2025, it will be something that's integrated into our work lives, and we'll be able to start to move forward from it.
I like that, real integration into the workplace. So we're going to jump to a question on AI, but before we do that, we're going to lose Rihanna in like 4 minutes. So I want to ask her own last, fast 5 questions before we lose her. And then we still have 10 more minutes to wrap it all up. And we're also going to look at some of the comments from our listeners in terms of what they see as changing. So Rihanna, before we lose you, the theme for the conference this year is Disrupting Status Quo. So tell us what you'll be sharing in the conference when it comes to disrupting status quo. I'm excited about your topic. So tell us a little bit about it before you run off.
Thank you. Sorry, again, apologies that I have to drop quickly, but I'm actually really excited to talk about something called organizational physics. So we've heard about organizational behavior. We've talked about, how organizations are impacted by so many things, but I feel physics is one of the areas that hasn't been tapped into enough to really think about how the laws of physics exist in organizations and how they play out. We talk about momentum and business momentum and how we must keep the momentum going. Well, momentum's not just a business term, right? It has a definition in physics, and it has an equation that goes with it in physics. And so I'm going to be exploring that, and we'll talk about how, when we add people to an already behind project, how that doesn't often help with speeding it up, and why that is, because that's grounded in physics. And I think another thing that I really want to say is a lot of things, and especially AI, are so important as part of, what will help with increasing the speed. And we talked about how that's going to disrupt things. And really, I think for a lot of people, for AI, it's a revolution if they haven't seen the evolution, right? Like they haven't seen it coming, and now it's like here and we're surprised, but actually it's been coming for a while.
When we think about the Change Leadership Conference, we're going into our 8th year, and we started talking about AI 6 years ago.
Exactly.
AI, fourth industrial revolution. So, we saw some of these things coming where people were like, really, AI, that's not really happening to me, type of thing. So AI is coming. So thank you, Rihanna. I know we're going to lose you on that one. And I also want to share, comments from one of our listeners who talks about AI, and it says, AI will be integrated into organizations, increasing productivity and creating AI governance and trust jobs. That is one thing that we need to focus on. And, we keep on saying AI is here to stay. And whether we like it or not, is how do we integrate it into our jobs and into our work to do it better. So I would say be on that track, like AI is going to disrupt things. So Rihanna, thank you. Thank you for your contribution around AI. And, while we're still on the topic of AI, I want to go to you, Cher. And my question to you is like, what are your thoughts on the buzz around AI right now?
Okay, so we've all clarified the fact that it is here to stay. I think for me, it makes me nervous, not in its capability, but in its rapid transformation and how much I feel I need to know and understand so that I can continue to evolve my value based off of its capability and how I'm leveraging it. So that's where it makes me so nervous, because there's just so much. Every time I look, a new way to do this, a new way to do that. There's this tool that can do this. And if you don't know what's in your space that you can leverage to do, so you can basically, I look at AI as skipping to the good part so that I get to use what's in here faster, better, and produce at a different speed, at a different caliber, right from your initial output. So that's where it makes me nervous, because I feel like every time I look, and it's often, and dedicating that time to learn and not just learn about, but actually apply what you learned, that makes me nervous. But I'm excited. Is it an excited nervousness? It's just, we have to be intentional about practice and application, and not just knowing, oh, I heard about this new tool. No, but does it make sense? Can you use it?
Oh my gosh, I'm feeling you on that one. It's scary, but I'm so excited about it. Scary and exciting. What about you, Tim?
There are so many applications, right? As a visual designer, that side of me, I feel like that there are areas where, some of my friends call AI the plagiarism machine, right? That it takes their art, and then somebody can make their art just by AI, having the robots come in, suction up that style and push it out into the world. So I think that there's still some challenges in how we best adopt it and make it work for us. I really love what Cher said about understanding how to make our own processes better. and understanding where we tend to spin and take time and like work through how can we use that as our editor, as our friend, as our guide to help further our decision making. I think particularly for change leaders, AI is really valuable in the aggregation of data. That as we think about, we're trying to get information and there's more information available than ever before. And I think that a lot of us have done the traditional like sticky note affinity mapping. We're going to put these all on a wall and figure out what they mean. AI can do that really quickly. And I think that's an application as a leader that's really going to be valuable for me if I'm the kind of leader who likes to listen to the data. So I think that the other change that's going to happen is leaders being more willing to listen and not just go with the gut, right? Leaders being more willing to be adaptable and to learn for what the data are telling them.
Oh my gosh, Tim, you have even given some insights into the conference already, because we're going to, and even the next Fast Five session, which is next week, and we're going to have Jason Little on there, because we're going to be doing AI and change management. And people are going to get to see the power of leveraging AI when it comes to change management. And I like a few words you said, and that's how I think about AI. I think about AI as my thinking partner. So it's how you use AI. It's not whether you use AI. We're getting to that place. Amanda, what about for you?
Yeah, so I've actually just come out of a University of Oxford AI for Business program. So this is very top of mind. And if anyone's looking for some, formal schooling around this, I highly recommend it. It was a very intense program. But the one thing I'll pull from that to share with you, especially for change leaders, is around the ethics and adoption processes. And one of the big pieces was not trying to get sucked into the what's the latest, what's the greatest, how can we use it, but stay with your roots first and go, how will we ethically check these systems and make sure it's compliant with our organization? What process internally will we go through to vet this technology and test? And thirdly, the thing we have to remember is that it will not only become more prominent, but just with being easily accessible, but it'll be more prominent to build. People will be building their own very easily. And so
that's a scary bit sometimes.
And so having these mechanisms in place where we go, well, when someone builds something, how do we check it? Or are we inviting it? Or when do we invest in building something ourselves because we can't trust something else? And like empowering yourself to even build your own if you feel like some of the external resources aren't passing your checks and balances. So that's something you can start thinking about now. You should be thinking about already, but if not, start thinking about now.
Yeah, and to what you've said, we had two comments which are interesting. We had one from Trooks, and I'll just quickly read, the first line of what he said. In terms of frontline staff now have real-time online coaching AI. But what I like to the point you just made, Amanda, they say have the ability to test AI recommendations against real customer interaction. So that is key where they're testing. And then I also like what Sean just said. He said the challenge with AI is the data is leveraged, valid, or whether, is it valid or whether it's biased in some way. So we need to start bringing in those ethics. How are we testing this data? I've seen myself putting something in ChatGPT, ask it a question, and it came out wrong. And I had to say, that's not what I asked you for. And he said, oh, sorry. And he gave me the real answer. So it's not about using, tools like ChatGPT or generative AI blindly. We still have to have that baseline knowledge and foundation in what it is that we're doing, to test the data. So the ethics have to be there. The policies have to be in place. And to the earlier point, Tim, what you said and what we had another person say has to be integrated into our policies, our governance, and how we operate and what it is that we do. Okay, so we still want to hear from people in the audience. Tell us how, it's going to disrupt the workplace. We want to hear from you. And I have my final question to you all. And it starts with the theme for the conference this year, May 29th, just literally about 20 days away, is Disrupting Status Quo. So when we think about disrupting status quo, I'm going to start with you, team. What are you going to be sharing at the Change Leadership Conference? Give us a sense. It's, a teaser.
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things that I have been hearing and experiencing again and again is that there's a lot of change fatigue right now. I think a lot of people are just like, another thing. Well,
I even see the flip
that
side,
like, and that's internal and external, right? That there's just a lot of people who are burnt out. So and maybe a lack of trust that I see happening as well. And so I am going to be presenting 3 really practical tools that change leaders can take and run with that will really enhance their ability to articulate their vision, to communicate and collaborate, and to really sort of supercharge their ability to feel like they're learning from their people and not speaking at their people. I think that most critically, that any kind of framework or worksheet or whatever else you might receive, right? Okay, well that could be used in certain contexts. You need to listen to it and you need to learn from it in order to be able to be effective. I think that we're the greatest thing I've heard in the last couple of years was somebody asking a very pointed, difficult question to a leader in an organization. And their response was, I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. Having the humility and the self-realization that they didn't know the answer to that and didn't feel like they had to answer it on the spot was an example to me of a leader who felt very comfortable in their role and knew that they weren't just trying to come off as the salesperson, know-it-all genius, right? That they were actually willing to listen to that question. And they said, we need to meet on that question because that's going to be important for us, as opposed to saying, coming out with their short soundbite answer.
That is great. And that even speaks a little bit to what Rihanna said before she left about the dynamics in the workplace is changing between employee and employer. And I also like that vulnerability. Leadership style is changing. And, change is never going to be slower than we see today. How are we managing that change fatigue to our employees so that we're not experiencing this heightening burnout, overwhelm with all of the change? And it's our responsibility as change leaders to be that, to help develop that resiliency and manage that change fatigue. I'm looking forward to that. Cher, what about you? How are we disrupting status quo?
I mean, most leaders, in change or not, have not effectively leveraged their personal brands at work for work, especially as they're building trust and their credibility so that people are willing to follow them through the hard part, trust the change, trust the process and how they're communicating effectively. So I'll be sharing 5 simple upgrades that they can make to their personal brand so that they become better leaders during times of disruption and change, and how that's going to show up both online and face-to-face as well. So just really powerful but very tactical strategies that they can use to increase that speed and leverage the speed of trust and their credibility as they lead through change.
I like that. One of my favorite quotes is with John Maxwell, and it says, leadership is influence and influence is leadership. Same thing. In order to be able to lead, you have to have that influence, that building of trust, and bringing people along, these days it's less about the methodologies and the models and just more about how are you bringing people along, how you position yourself as that brand leader to be able to lead and drive and influence change. Really excited to hear your topic. And we do have a surprise element between myself and you, Cher, other than your topic that is going to be happening during the conference. Yeah. Amanda, what about you?
Thanks, Yvonne. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about disrupting the status quo around employee engagement and building a community. And specifically, we'll be using the vehicle of internal podcasts or private podcasts. And this has become a growing trend within the podcast and communication space. But what's tough is they're all private. So you can't learn from each other. You can't check out other companies. And so what I'll be doing is pulling back the curtain to giving some case studies on approaches for how to best to go on this route of building community, building trust and leadership, and helping with knowledge mobilization and employee engagement through internal podcasting.
I love that. we are going to be disrupting how we engage and communicate with people. It's just so interesting, as in those traditional methods we thought about, intranet, send an email, kind of thing. Our attention span is changing, and communication has become more important than ever in terms of how we lead change. And when we talk about what is one of the biggest reasons why change fails, it often comes down to communication. How can we disrupt how we communicate and engage with our team in today's fast-paced, fast-changing environment in terms of what's important to people? I'm looking forward to this already. I'm also looking forward to our next Fast Five, because we have another Fast Five on May 16th, where we're going to have some more fast speakers, share insights in terms of what their change journey looks like, or even what their career trajectory looks like, what they're going to be sharing at the conference. And I still really want to ask this question. This is a bonus question I really, really want to get in. So you have like 5 words or 2 words to answer this question. If you had to have any type of robots at home, what would it be? So starting with you, Tim, what would be that robot if you had to have a robot? And I also want to hear from the audience. Type. Anybody listening or watching the replay, if you had to have a robot at home or work, what would that be?
I think a disco bot that could just run around and play tunes for me, that would be great. Like a mobile stereo studio that would just follow me around and be my DJ. I think that'd be great.
Wow, that's interesting. Cool. What about you, Cher?
I definitely need, if you guys remember the Jetsons, there was like a maid that walked around, cleaned everything, and like literally was floating right around. That would be me. It's my place. I would be the most happiest woman in the
You
entire
have
world.
somebody who's saying the same as you.
Exactly. That would be, I'd be a very happy Cher.
What about you, Amanda?
Okay, I think sometimes I waste the most amount of time in the morning being like, what is the weather and what do I wear? Especially in Toronto, where the weather is like 3 seasons in a day. So I'd love a robot who could aggregate the weather and then look at my closet and also be able to form the outfit for me. And even if there's transitions throughout the day, lay that all out so I don't have to spend time thinking about it.
Oh my gosh. For me, it would be similar to Cher. It would be so similar to Cher. I would want somebody that just goes around clean, because I like everything perfect, but I never have the time to have everything perfect. So somebody just doing the same thing, and Sean even says that he talks about the Jetsons as well, type of thing. So yeah, totally with you. Thank you so much for your time today. And, as we round up, and excited to hear on all of your topics. And for anybody listening, there's more information about the conference. You can go to www.thechangeleadership.com, and the link is going to be posted in the comments. So check it out, and come in person and check out the speakers at the conference. But more than anything else, if you can't make it in person, like I said, we love that we can make our conference accessible now. And we have a great interactive virtual platform, so you can also attend virtually to interact with the speakers as well. So thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate all of you. And to everybody who is listening, as we end this, put in an emoji, tell us what you thought about this topic. Tell us what you want to hear from our next speakers, set of speakers who are joining us. Drop a word for our speakers. And thank you all for listening to our Fast Five. Bye for now, everybody.